In 1987, a cartoon aired once and then destroyed the entire studio that made it. Not bankrupt, just gone. And everyone who saw it remembers the exact same ending, but no copy has ever been found. If stories like this make you feel less alone in your fascination with the forgotten corners of the internet, subscribe. You'll find more of them here, and you're not weird for caring about what disappeared. The studio was called Helix Animation, and if you search for it now, you'll find almost nothing. A few references in trade publications from the mid-80s. A business registration in Burbank that expired in 1988. One blurry photograph of a storefront with the logo barely visible through the glare. Helix wasn't a major player. They did commercial work mostly, local stuff. A few Saturday morning filler segments that networks would use to pad out time slots. The kind of animation that was competent but forgettable, designed to sell cereal or teach kids about recycling. Nothing that would end up in anyone's personal collection. Nothing that would be remembered. And that's exactly what makes Fade to Gray so bizarre. Because according to the fragmented accounts that started appearing on forums in the early 2000s, it was different. Not better, necessarily, just different in a way that stuck with people. The story goes that Fade to Gray was supposed to be a pilot, a test run for a new anthology series aimed at slightly older kids, maybe 8 to 12 years old. The premise was simple, or at least it seems simple from the outside. Each episode would follow a different character who slowly realizes that their world is fading, literally losing color and detail until they're left in an empty void. The hook was that the characters would try different solutions, different ways to bring the world back, and sometimes they'd succeed, and sometimes they wouldn't. A little existential for a kid's show? Sure, but the 80s were weird. Networks were experimenting. Shows like The Twilight Zone had proven that you could unsettle younger audiences and they'd come back for more. So Helix got a small budget, enough for one episode, and they went to work. The episode that aired, if it aired, was about a girl named Clara. She wakes up one morning and notices that her bedroom wallpaper looks duller than usual. She thinks maybe her eyes are tired, but as the day goes on, more colors start to drain away. The sky goes from blue to gray. Her mother's face loses definition, features smoothing out like a sketch that's been partially erased. Clara tries to tell people what's happening, but they don't see it. Or they don't care. Or maybe they're fading too, and they've already forgotten what color looked like. The descriptions of this part are always the same across different accounts. Clara running through her neighborhood, which is now just rough outlines and gray shapes, calling out for anyone who remembers. And then she stops running. She stands still. And she starts to fade too. Not scared anymore, just tired, just accepting it. Now here's where you pause and ask yourself if you've ever felt like that. Like the world's details are slipping away, and you're the only one who notices, or cares, or remembers how things used to be sharper, more defined, more real. If this story is hitting something familiar in you, something you've thought about at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep, drop a comment. Just say, "I've felt the fading before." Let other people know they're not alone in this. Because the truth is, that feeling is probably why this story refuses to die. It's why people keep searching for a cartoon that might never have existed in the first place. We recognize something in it, something true, even if the details are false. The episode supposedly ended with static. Not credits, not a logo, just static that lasted longer than it should have. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. And here's the detail that shows up in every single account. The static wasn't random. If you watched carefully, you could see shapes in it, faces maybe, or the outline of the neighborhood Clara had been running through. But simplified even further, reduced to the most basic geometric forms. Some people say they saw words in the static, but no one agrees on what the words said. One person claimed it was, "We're still here," and another swore it was, "Let it go," and someone else insisted it was just their own name, repeated over and over in barely visible letters. That last one always seemed the most unsettling to me. The idea that the static was personalized somehow, that it knew who was watching. After that single airing, nothing. No reruns, no announcements. The show that was supposed to follow it just started on time, as if Fade to Gray had never happened. People who called the network to ask about it, and yes, there were people who called, because even in 1987 there were obsessives who cataloged everything they watched. Those people were told that no such program had aired. Not that it was pulled, not that it was controversial, just that it didn't exist. Their records showed a standard commercial block in that time slot. The network representative would sometimes suggest that the caller had maybe dozed off and dreamed it, which is exactly the kind of response that makes people more determined to prove they're right. Within a few months, Helix Animation shut down. Not dramatically, no news coverage. The staff just stopped showing up. The office was cleared out and the lease expired. Some of the animators moved on to other studios, and when tracked down years later by internet investigators, their responses were vague and uncomfortable. One person said they didn't remember working on anything called Fade to Gray. Another admitted they remembered the project, but claimed it never got past the storyboard phase, that it was scrapped for being too depressing. A third said that something had gone wrong during production, something that upset the whole team, but wouldn't elaborate. The most detailed response came from an anonymous post on a Lost Media forum in 2006, someone claiming to have been an assistant animator at Helix. They said the episode was completed and delivered to the network, but that during the final weeks of production, the studio had felt wrong. People calling in sick, equipment malfunctioning in ways that didn't make sense. The final render of the episode had apparently corrupted 3 times before they got a clean version, and each time it corrupted, it did so in the same place, right at the moment Clara starts to fade. This anonymous poster described watching the finished episode in the studio before it aired and feeling genuinely disturbed by it, not because it was scary in an obvious way, but because it felt too real. They said the animation had a quality that made you forget you were watching a cartoon. The way Clara's face lost detail wasn't stylized or exaggerated. It was just sad. It looked like watching someone disappear in real time. And the background fading, the world becoming less and less defined, it reminded them of depression, of dissociation, of the way reality can feel paper thin when you're not doing well. They said the head animator had wanted to make something that reflected how kids actually felt sometimes, not how adults thought kids felt. And maybe they had succeeded too well. Maybe they had made something that was technically a cartoon, but functionally something else. Something closer to a genuine expression of existential dread. The post ended with a single line. "I'm glad it's lost, honestly." Some things shouldn't be easy to find. This sentiment shows up a lot in the discussions around Fade to Gray. This ambivalence. People want to see it. They're desperate to confirm it existed. But there's also this underlying anxiety about what it would mean to actually watch it. Would it live up to the descriptions? Would it be disappointing? Just a mediocre cartoon that people have built up into something more significant? Or would it be worse than expected? Would it actually do something to you, the way people claim it did to the studio? The way it allegedly contributed to Helix just dissolving into nothing? There's a superstition that's developed around it. This idea that the cartoon itself was somehow caustic, that it contained something that damaged whatever it touched. The studio, the master tapes, the memories of the people who made it. It's irrational, obviously, but it persists. Over the years, there have been hoaxes. Someone uploads a video claiming to be the lost episode, and it gets passed around until someone proves it's just clips from other cartoons edited together with a gray filter. Someone else creates an elaborate fake production document with character sheets and a script detailed enough to be convincing until an eagle-eyed commenter points out that the font is wrong for 1987. Each hoax generates a wave of excitement and then disappointment and then anger. The community gets smaller and more skeptical, but there's always a core group that keeps looking, that checks archive sites and estate sales and storage unit auctions, hoping that somewhere in a box of unlabeled VHS tapes, there's a recording made by someone who happened to have their television set to that channel on that specific night. The odds are infinitesimal, but they're not zero. What makes Fade to Gray different from other pieces of lost media is that it's not clear whether finding it would answer anything or just create more questions. With most lost content, the mystery is straightforward. It existed, it was documented, and now it's gone, and we want it back because we want to preserve history or satisfy curiosity. But Fade to Gray exists in this strange category where the existence itself is disputed, where the people who should remember it have contradictory stories, where the physical evidence has been absent from the start. It's less like looking for a lost episode and more like trying to prove a shared dream was real. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the reason it resonates is because it represents something larger than itself. It's about the things that slip away before we can hold on to them, the moments that feel significant when they're happening but leave no trace, the experiences that shape us but can't be proven. There's a theory that Fade to Gray was a very early form of creepypasta, that it never existed as a real cartoon, but started as a story someone told online, and other people added to it and embellished it until it became this elaborate piece of collaborative fiction. That theory makes sense on paper, but it doesn't account for the people who claim to remember seeing it before the internet was a thing, before forums existed where these stories could be coordinated. Unless those people are lying, or misremembering, or conflating different memories into a single false one. Human memory is notoriously unreliable. We're all capable of creating detailed recollections of events that never happened, especially if we're exposed to suggestions from others. So maybe Fade to Gray is just a case study in how collective false memory works, how a compelling narrative can override actual experience. But then there's the question of helix animation. That part is documentable. The studio did exist, it did close suddenly, and while there could be mundane explanations, financial trouble or creative differences or personal drama among the founders, the timing is suspicious. The refusal of former employees to talk about it in any consistent way is suspicious. The lack of any surviving work from the studio, even the commercial projects they definitely completed, that's suspicious too. It's as if someone went through and methodically erased every trace of what they'd created, which would be a strange amount of effort for a small animation studio that no one had heard of. Unless there was a reason. Unless something about their final project had made that erasure necessary. So where does that leave us? With a story that can't be confirmed or denied. With a piece of media that exists primarily as an absence, a gap in the record that people keep trying to fill with speculation and memory and hope. With the uncomfortable possibility that some things are lost not by accident, but by design. That there are works created with the understanding that they shouldn't last, that they're too honest, or too damaging, or too strange to exist in the permanent archive we call culture. Fade to Gray might have been an attempt to show children something true about existence, about impermanence and fading, and the fear that we might not matter as much as we think we do. And maybe that truth was too much. Maybe it still is. If you're still here, still thinking about Clara standing in her gray world, accepting that she's disappearing too, then you understand why channels like this exist, why some of us can't let these stories go, even when they refuse to resolve. The internet has made us believe that everything can be found eventually, that nothing is truly lost anymore, but that's not quite right. Some things slip through, some things resist being saved. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the searching is the point. Maybe what we're really looking for isn't the cartoon itself, but the confirmation that other people felt the same unsettling recognition when they heard about it, the same sense that it was describing something real, even if it never existed. You're not alone in that feeling. None of us are. We're all just trying to remember the details before they fade to gray.